people of the valley told many stories about Junius. Sometimes they hated him with the loathing busy people have for lazy ones. And sometimes they envied his laziness. But often they pitied him because he blundered so. No one in the valley ever realized that he was happy. They told how, on a doctor's advice, Junius bought a goat to milk for the baby. He didn't inquire into the sex of his purchase, nor give his reason for wanting a goat. When it arrived, he looked under it and very seriously asked, Is this a normal goat? Sure, said the owner. But shouldn't there be a bag or something immediately behind the hind legs? For the milk, I mean. The people of the valley roared about that. Later, when a new and better goat was provided, Junius fiddled with it for 2 days and could not draw a drop of milk. He wanted to return this goat as defective until the owner showed him how to milk it. Some people claimed that he held the baby under the goat and let it suck its own milk, but this was untrue. The people of the valley declared they didn't know how he ever reared the child. One day, Junius went into Monterey and hired an old German to help him on the farm. He gave his new servant $5 on account and never paid him again. Within 2 weeks, the hired man was so entangled in laziness that he did no more work than his employer. The two of them sat around the place together, discussing things which interested and puzzled them, how color comes to flowers, whether there is a symbology in nature, where Atlantis lay, how the Incas interred their dead. In the spring, they planted potatoes, always too late, and without a covering of ashes to keep the bugs out. They sowed beans and corn and peas, watched them for a time, then forgot them. The weeds covered everything from sight. It was no unusual thing to see Junius burrow into a perfect thicket of mallow weeds and emerge carrying a pale cucumber. He had stopped wearing shoes because he liked the feeling of the warm earth on his feet, and because he had no shoes. In the afternoon, Junius talked to Jacob Stutz a great deal. You know, he said, when the children died, I thought I had reached a particular high peak of horror. Then, almost while I thought it, the horror turned to sorrow, and the sorrow dwindled to sadness. I didn't know my wife, nor the children very well, I guess. Perhaps they were too near to me. It's a strange thing, this knowing. It is nothing but an awareness of details. There are long-visioned minds and short-visioned. I've never been able to see things that are close to me. For instance, I'm much more aware of the Parthenon than of my own house, over there. Suddenly, Junius's face seemed to quiver with feeling, and his eyes brightened with enthusiasm. Jacob, he said, have you ever seen a picture of the frieze of the Parthenon? Yes, and it is good too, said Jacob. Junius laid a hand on his hired man's knee. Those horses, he said, those lovely horses, bound for a celestial pasture. Those eager and yet dignified young men setting out for an incredible fiesta that's being celebrated just around the cornice. I wonder how a man can know what a horse feels like when it is very happy, and that sculptor must have known, or he couldn't have carved them so. That was the way it went. Junius could not stay on a subject. Often the men went hungry because they failed to find a hen's nest in the grass when it came supper time. The son of Junius was called Robert Louis. Junius called him that when he thought of it, but Jacob Stutz rebelled at what he considered a kind of literary preciousness. Boys must be named like dogs, he maintained. One sound is sufficient for the name. Even Robert is too long. He should be called Bob. Jacob nearly got his way. I'll compromise with you, said Junius. We'll call him Robbie. Robbie is really shorter than Robert, don't you think? He often gave way before Jacob, for Jacob continually struggled a little against the webs that were being spun about him. Now and then, with a kind of virtuous fury, he cleaned the house.